Hey, folks, and welcome back to another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn. I'm excited to be with you as always. And it's always good to just connect with people that I've talked to online for any period of time. And this next guest is certainly no exception to that. One of the things that I've really taken away from doing this Zweig Letter Podcast over, man, I'm losing track of the years now, but what, 2016 to 20, it's been almost 8 years now, 230 plus episodes of the podcast. And I have to say that I've learned so much in doing this podcast, both when it was originally me and Mark Zweig, and then when I started inviting other people on the podcast, like this next guest. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is really interact with those in the design industry space that are not only doing interesting things, because I think everybody's doing interesting things in the design industry space, but I think it's important to amplify as many voices as possible. And so that's one of the reasons why I have our next guest on today to join us on the Zweig Letter Podcast. The other reason why I have this person on is because he is kind of always shooting his shot, if you will. If any of you know that Hamilton reference, this individual would write notes on the sidelines of all of Mark Zweig's Zweig Letter articles that he writes each and every week. And so I took note of this a while back, and I was like, who's this young upstart writing all these notes to Mark and commenting? And it was always good, insightful commentary. And so, you know what they say is, if you have something to say, you really should say it. And I'm actually really thankful, and in all seriousness, I'm very thankful that Kyle Cheerangie Cheerangie is our guest today. He is a department manager in South Florida with HNTV, and just I mean he's smart as a whip. And I said I had to have him on the podcast. We had a chance to talk a couple of weeks back, and I shared with him the conversation that I wanted to have, which was really simply a conversation of encouragement for the young professionals in the design industry space. I hope this podcast goes wide and far in terms of encouraging the young people that are in this space, both engineers and architects, to really step up and shoot your shot and not wait for somebody to invite you to the table. But grab a chair and come sit at the table, because there's room for all of us. And so without further ado, I know that's a long preamble, Kyle, but I wanted to thank you again for coming on the Zweig Letter Podcast and joining us today. How are you doing?
No, thank you, Randy. That was a really interesting introduction. Yeah, those Weig letters, like I said, I told you I've been reading them for years, and there's always something good in them. And I don't know what was the ballsy move about it, but I always just thought that more people should read it. And I knew that LinkedIn was a place that would sort of get that traction if it looked like something attractive. So I think, and I've gotten notes from people there. They have signed up to read it, and yeah, Mark Zweig's section always has something good. And I think I told you last time, if you want to stay at least sharp about the issues in the AAC industry, like, this is the resource that I have. I don't know of many others that are weekly and have as good information in it as this Zweig letter. So I appreciate that, just from a resource for myself. And like I said, if other people can benefit from it, I hope they do. And if my commentary helps them think more, same thing. I hope they get some benefit from that. So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, absolutely. No, my pleasure, man. And I know it sounds a little tongue in cheek humor, but I was very serious about just the simple fact that you did step out and not necessarily assert yourself, but just share what your thoughts were and what your feelings were. And I know Mark personally, he has appreciated it, because actually he and I have talked about you,
Mhm.
and he said, yeah, that guy is really, really sharp. He's going to be running a firm one day at some point in time. And
Cool, thank you.
Mark has always been been astute at identifying talent and identifying individuals who will be able to take the next step in their career. But you know, I firmly believe that's a lot of your peers out there in the industry. But so that we can just back up a little bit and make sure that everybody can completely appreciate you and your perspective and what you're bringing to the table, as you are working through things. Just tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background, Kyle. And were you, did you always want to be an engineer?
Yeah, so I went to school in Trinidad, and in Trinidad, you pick topics right around 13 or 14 that you do O levels and A levels on, which is the British system of after high school. So I picked technical drawing, physics, electronics. We call it physical geography. So topics sort of geared towards what I could see would get me into civil engineering, sort of on the advice of a friend of mine. So we both sort of followed that path. So yeah, really early on, I did think I would end up being at least some sort of engineering or at least building things. So once I finished high school, I got to the last grade in high school in Trinidad, and then I immigrated to the States and finished my last year of high school here. And I went to FEU, went right into a Bachelor's of Civil Engineering, graduated in 2011 with that degree. And I went to work for a mid-sized firm in West Palm Beach. And if you remember back in 2011, the market was not great back then.
Yeah.
Getting any sort of position was challenging, and I know people either went to Illinois or they went back into their master's program. So I was lucky enough to start working under a really great group and built a good foundation of technical skills at that firm. Took that right now to where I am at HNTV. But yeah, I've always wanted to build things. I grew up playing with Lego, a Lego kid. Knew that I wanted to be able to just see things being constructed. So it's sort of always been in the path. When I was growing up, I remember my dad was building our house, so I was always as part just kind of around when they were doing construction. So I don't know where else I would have ended up. Is I think where I'm going with this. I'm not sure what other field I would have ended up in.
Yeah.
And then I went to do my MBA at UF back in 2018, 2019,
Okay.
because I knew I needed that next level of skill after my technical degree, just to see what else is there. And the MBA was such a great program because I got to see sort of like the possibilities in the world. I was in school with anyone from being in the healthcare industry and sales to people that dealt with importing marble from Brazil. So I got to see all of these different professions, and I still love engineering, so I stuck with engineering, and this is where I am right now.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's a great story, and certainly you and I spoke originally. You know, we talked about the importance of education, the importance of reading. You know, kind of setting yourself up for success long term, right? And
Yeah.
certainly, I think for some, not all, but for some, the path to career growth and other opportunities is certainly to get a well-rounded education. And when you go from the technical nature and aspect of specifically civil engineering or architecture to getting that well-rounded business education that an MBA offers, it certainly gives you, as they say, a lot of tools in your tool belt to use on a regular basis, both on projects specifically, but also as you interact with clients, as you engage clients, as you kind of develop new ideas to meet the needs of the marketplace from
Yeah.
a design perspective. It just gives you a much stronger foundation to work from.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what it was about marketing class, but I fell in love with the marketing class at UF. Um, we don't have any of that exposure as engineers in going through school. So that class just kind of really opened my eyes into things like what are our differentiators on a job? What are you actually using to stand out? Marketing is not a hope. There's strategy and there's positioning behind it. So yeah, that was one of my favorite classes doing the MBA. And then other courses like accounting, I started understanding, okay, what goes into a P&L, financing, what is the weighted average cost of cash for an endeavor. So like you said, it just opens up your eyes. You were a technical person, you're just kind of drilling down on the project, and you're hearing all these terms, gross margin, we lost money, we didn't make money. But now you can understand when you see on the back end, okay, how did we market that job? What was our margin on the project? And you start thinking about operationally what we can improve on in the future. So yes, the whole breadth of what it takes to run a business really is put into your eyes and on the forefront when you do that MBA. So yeah, you can see some of that comes out in the letters and my markups. I just start thinking about that stuff, particularly with Mark's articles, because yeah, he is very business driven and business focused with his letters. Not there's nothing technical about what his writing does, but yeah, those letters really bring that out. It's like I think start clicking a little bit more, and you like I said, you just keep thinking about it and just keep really in the game and focused and engaged on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and again, it's. I think it's what happens is it's like with anything, your understanding is a form of a muscle, and the more that you work on that muscle, and the more that you exercise it, right, through
Yeah,
critical thought, through reasoning, through just looking at concepts and determining whether or not it does make sense in relationship to what you're doing within your profession. I mean, all of that plays a part. And again, like I said, I just looking at the back and forth and also just the comments that you would elicit from multiple posts on LinkedIn in your response to many of Mark's articles, I found really interesting, and hopefully I'll be able to in our show notes link to a few of those, or at least encourage people to follow you on LinkedIn so that they can get a little insight as well. And if for no other reason, I think it's valuable, especially for some of us older heads in the design industry space, to look at what the young people are doing, right? Because I don't, I think I told you this, but when we spoke, I don't think that I would have seen somebody at your same level about 10 years in, a decade into the industry plus, and I'm sure I'm shortchanging you a year or two there, but like a full decade's worth of experience in the industry. If I look back to look at your peer back in 1997, 98, 99, I don't know that they would have had those same interactions.
yeah,
The industry was just different, right? A lot of times, people were in places where it was like, don't speak until spoken to, and I mean, it should just be head down, get in your cubicle and get the work done, and that's it.
yeah.
And it's changed a lot, and I'm curious to know, because this is kind of the direction that I wanted to take this conversation.
Mhm.
What are your peers, your people that are your age range and younger, saying about the design industry and what they need to be successful?
I'm actually hearing, and I comment on this every once in a while. I'm hearing a lot of concern about work-life balance more than I hear about what people need to be successful. I know that's counterintuitive to your question, um, but I am actually kind of concerned about that sometimes.
Yeah.
Are people actually trying to plan out their career? I see one or two folks that do it, and a lot of all the folks in my group, they're on point right now. And sometimes it's just the reps that you need either through a pursuit. People need to get their public speaking developed to be able to go and present, but the progression from engineer to PM, maybe to a higher level manager, that's a pretty defined path, right? You need to be able to do the work first. I always say that's your first 0 to 3 years. Like you need to get as technically proficient as possible in your discipline, because if you don't know what you're designing, you're not going to be able to price it, and then you're not going to be able to sell it. So there's a pretty defined path there that everyone here is on. So 0 to 3, get your technical skills in line, and that's always being developed. But 0 to 3, I don't want people focusing on much else. You just focus on that. 3 to 5, you're starting to become a task lead. People can see, okay, if you have gaps in different technical areas, maybe you need to do more plant production, maybe you need more design. So that's 3 to 5 years, and then starting to branch out into a task leader. From 5 to 10 years, we will try to develop task leader to PM, right? And that's happened here with several people. So you still have your technical skills. So now we can be able to price the project, and then you'll be able to present the presentation skills right around 8 to 10 years. I think is the path to get there. But even though I have that path outlined in my mind, in between there, I've seen And like I said, people are more concerned about the balance of their lives to work during that time. That's what I'm seeing a lot more of actually.
Yeah, and do you think that's just is it a generational thing? Is it just what do you think is fueling that
Yeah.
concept or that idea? And again,
Mhm.
I'm not knocking it one way or the other. I do believe that everybody deserves to have me time, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
time to reflect and time to
No, but
kind of
there are macro factors pushing on that, right?
absolutely,
There
absolutely.
are a lot of macro and I wrote an article about this that was pulling out these different factors in society that I think are creating this challenge, whether and anything from social media usage,
Hmm.
um, what were the other ones? Distrust in standard media formats, um, the reduction in people's proclivity to have a family, I think, is one of them,
Yep.
because that creates a you know it reduces the need for stability, and careers provide stability. And there were some other factors, as far as inflation. People are seeing their money inflated away. So it's like I'm working, but it's not working for me. And you have to remember, the people that are 0 to 5 years right now, their first half part of their career was COVID,
Yeah.
right? They worked from home. They they may not have gotten the direct mentorship, and then we came back to the office, and everybody expected things to go back to normal. So there needs to be an understanding that people had a totally different start to their career that we need to recognize as different. So, and that's sort of like, you need to have compassion with that, you need to have empathy with those folks, but there are several factors pushing on this. You know.
Yeah. So, are you guys fully back in the office 100%, or do you offer like a flexible work environment? And the
We're
reason
we're
why,
flexible, yeah. We're
yeah,
flexible. But for design heavy stuff, I feel like you have to be in the office.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you have to be able to talk to your peers. So when we have sessions of, like I said, if someone wants to work from home, we don't have a problem with that, and I don't have a problem with it either. But sometimes you feel the need, like if you're working on something with your team, the best arrangement is with your team member right outside your door, right outside on the cube next to you. So we are flexible with that, but I think the real hard stuff, you need to be together to do it.
yeah,
And we do a lot of really hard projects, right?
yeah. No, I mean that makes perfect sense. I know I heard Scott Galloway talk about this. I follow him, and he has the Prof G podcast and a few others, and he's also the co-host of what is it? My gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now. With Pivot with oh, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, he's on a couple of podcasts. There's a real a solid marketing professor from the
Yeah,
NYU
yeah,
School of Business, and he does a lot of other things. He's started a number of businesses, but one of the things that he said was, for young people nowadays, one of the surefire ways of advancement is being in the office. And he said his advice would be to any young person, or if he had a child that was of work age, he would say, hey, you need to be in there face to face with your manager and other leaders in
yeah,
order to put yourself on a faster path of growth within any organization right now, even
yeah.
though we have come out of the pandemic with a much more malleable work environment when it comes to remote work and all of that. Would you agree with that statement that he made in terms of, the FaceTime really is truly important to grow and
Yeah.
advance in a career?
Because we have an office right now. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, and we have an office in Miami, and it takes effort to get those two teams to, even though everyone is in the office. You have people in the office in Miami, people in the office in Fort Lauderdale. They work on projects together. It takes some effort even to get those teams together, right? So
Hmm.
people are fully engaged at both offices, and it still takes a lot of thinking on coordination between events, right? Who's going to do what? So imagine if you had a person that was home trying to coordinate with a person that's in the office on the team. And what I find, like that, even right there, so you're at home, you already have your distractions at home.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't want to knock it. I know it's not cool to knock it, But when you're doing really hard things, I feel like you have to be together. Just like the Professor Scott Gallo said, like just to have that FaceTime. We have one intern in Miami, and I love the guy. He's great. He's here while he's in school, and I call him. I call him when he's here just to be able to keep that connection because I want him to keep engaged with the team. Right? If he was here in the office, even better. So it takes another level of thinking that you don't just bump into people. Like we have whiteboards around our office that if somebody's thinking of something, you'll be like, okay, let's go draw it up on our whiteboard. We draw on our windows. So there's a lot of interaction that just happens through osmosis that you can't replicate through the digital medium.
Yeah, it's hard, and even with all of the great tools like Slack and so many others that allow for interoffice communication and the like, it's still there really isn't any substitute for that face to face, kneecap to kneecap connection with folks,
Yeah,
because it just allows it just some things do get lost in translation. So
yeah,
and
yeah. And that's my opinion. Maybe there are teams out there that work fantastically doing it.
yeah,
But what I've found for like design intense work where people need to be able to cooperate, cooperation is best done in person.
yeah, it is. It definitely is. And I'd be interested to hear what other listeners of the podcast think about that. And certainly our goal always with the Zweig Letter podcast is to, extol the virtues and benefits of the Zweig Letter, which is one of the longest running newsletters in the design industry space, where you get actually a lot of different thought leaders that come together and write
Hmm.
about the industry and write about the ins and outs of what's working, what isn't working, and from a management consulting perspective, folks from the Zweig Group are able to kind of give a bird's eye view of how the industry can continue to improve while also amplifying those industry voices that are trying to make those improvements. So it's kind of, I mean, it's a unique opportunity, I think, to hear from different voices and to get the perspectives of what's really working in this industry. Because
Yeah.
this is the other thing that you and I talked about is too often, I think, and this even happens with young people. I think sometimes what's lost with the younger generation is how important their role is as a design professional. And I don't know if you remember,
Yeah.
we talked about like, I would always start out a lot of my leadership trainings with the fact that, hey, what you guys do is so intrinsically important. I mean, you are responsible.
Yeah.
You being the engineers and architects that I would train or
Yeah.
talk to, you guys are responsible for the built environment. And I know you and I talked about that. I'd be curious to know, how that whole concept has never been lost with you as far as how you approach your
Mhm.
profession and your career.
No, like I mentioned, I was very fortunate to start where I started. That was a very design intense firm. So the importance and the significance of being an EOR was never lost to me. It was day one. This is something to strive towards because it is something worth doing and worth doing well. So it was just never a question of whether or not it was important. And I worked under a manager that I still think was one of the best engineers in Florida in general. Very intense, very technical project manager. But he was one of the best, and he would explain things in a way that you project yourself into the field, whether it be you look at the set of plans. So we were always thinking like an EOR, always thinking like an engineer. So it was just never a thought of not doing it. So it's always been a significance. I mean, South Florida and the client we work for in particular is extremely active. So there are projects always ongoing. Um, so we see the fruits of our labor pretty quickly. Within 2 or 3 years, you can see a job start construction, get to some significant completion level. So you always kind of see your work out there. So it's maybe other places the projects are slower, so maybe that isn't, you don't get the reps in. I talked about the reps of being of anything. Maybe other states they don't do as many projects as quickly. So, but here in South Florida, it's very rapid. There's a lot of projects. They happen quickly. The client is very sophisticated. The client is very efficient in how they put projects out. So you're always thinking about signing and sealing and making sure that you are upholding your duty to the public.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and it's something to be said for several states in the country, where growth is always happening. I mean, Florida, there's always something being
Yeah.
built, and there's always growth in Florida. Texas is another state. I mean, Texas was like that in the 90s when I was working with
Hmm.
a company that primarily did a lot of work with TxDOT. And even to this day, I
Hmm.
mean, TxDOT, I'm always amazed at how quickly things get put together. And it's kind of a testament to some of those markets where in some of the other maybe mature places, it doesn't always happen as quickly as they
Yeah.
would in some of these newer locales. And so, I mean, there's something to be said for maybe even thinking about working in places where you can get more exposure to more types of work on faster timetables, because
Yes.
it does open up the door for a lot of new knowledge and a lot of new understanding about how things fit into place. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, so I'm a roadway and a highway designer, right? I think this industry, because of the cadence of projects, produces some of the best project managers, some of the most technical engineers. Not just because I'm here, but because of what I see people here can do. And I gave a presentation to FAU, and I'm going to do it down at FIU in a couple of months. But it's two students, and my recommendation to the first bullet point of that slide in your 0 year, right? Find a place where you can be get that technical proficiency early. Because say again, I see people get past that phase, Randy, and they try to sort of backtrack and learn stuff. And I don't think I've never really seen it happen very well, because you get so far ahead in years of experience, right? Um, that it's hard to go back to that stage. This stage is very intense, right? This 0 to 3 stage, it should be intense. At least it was for me.
Yeah.
It was a very intense time of learning for me, and it paid off, right? Because I didn't have to like go back and figure out how to think about design anymore. So that stage is so important. If you get to like 9 years and then you try to go back and learn what you should have learned at 4 or 3 or 5 years, it's really hard on people. So my recommendation to young students, if you want to do engineering and you don't want to do maybe administration or work at some a slower office or something like that, find a place where you can get technical proficiency as early as possible. That's my first recommendation. That's like I said, bullet point zero is get as technically proficient as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So it bleeds into everything else. You learn how to think about other things. You learn how to organize thoughts in your head. Like loading, it sounds kind of weird, but loading design data into your head is taxing. To sit down and design something, like figure out the relationship between a horizontal alignment, the profile, and a cross section, is an intense mental exercise. It takes a lot of calories from your brain. So when you start doing that, if you're at the stage of your career where you're getting 5 emails a day or 5 emails an hour about all kinds of issues, and you have to worry about putting together a presentation or a marketing pursuit or personnel issues, you can never get the concentration required to get good at that. So you have to do it while you have nothing else going on. This your 0 to 3 years, you're coming in as a designer. Do the design and try and get as many reps in there as possible and get good at it quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark Zweig has always told me, he told me at the beginning when I first joined, and I think I had mentioned it to you, that he said it's going to take you 3 years just to learn the industry, to understand
There you
the
go. Yep.
nomenclature, to understand the language. It's, the design industry has a language all its own. And
Yep.
I think you have to kind of embrace that. What are, and we kind of talked about this before, but we talked about the importance of kind of constantly always be learning, if you will,
Yeah.
if I can say it that way. But I know you like to read. I have a pretty voracious appetite when it comes to reading both
Hmm.
physical books. I'm on Audible all the time. I have a regular subscription to that. So when I'm not physically reading a book, I'm listening to a book. But talk about the importance of reading and how that's actually helped you
Yeah.
considerably in your career.
So when I started engineering, I was not very good. I'm gonna be the first person to say I think I even wrote it somewhere. I was not good at this, right? So I needed to find ways to become better. And that started with first thing was reading, and the next thing was actually writing.
Yeah,
So reading all of the books that everybody reads when they want to learn how to, interact with people. It's, how to win friends and influence people,
it's a classic.
um, classic books like that. There are other books on persuasion that are really good. Books like Influence, are, I think, foundational. And I actually have 5 books that I think all young engineers should read. I'll give you that after. But Influence is a good book once you start thinking about how to market yourself and market your product and your career. So yeah, picking up those books, and I same thing. When I didn't have a big book budget, I would search the name of the book and search PDF, or go to the library and borrow the book. And I always had a couple books around, just something to read. Like you said, if you're not doing something, pick the book up. I probably have 2 books in my bag right now, and just have like I said, an insatiable appetite just for knowledge. Just it could be anything. Sometimes it's junk. Sometimes I would I would get maybe a graphic novel from the library. I used to like to read that stuff as well. So just stay in the flow of it. Just keep that habit going, and eventually you will get bored with everything else, and the reading will become sort of the thing that you do when you want something to do.
Yeah.
That's my opinion there.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think I mentioned to you, and this is something I share with anyone that will listen, that Pew Research did a study that like 68% of college graduates never pick up a book after post graduation,
Yeah,
which I think
yeah,
is astounding. That means there's only 32% of us that are actually reading with any regularity
yeah.
whatsoever. So, and when I think about how detailed and how nuanced being a design engineer is, my thought would simply be, man, I hope that 32% includes all design professionals, right? But
Yeah,
it may
yeah.
not, so I don't know.
You see, the thing about, and I think I said this somewhere, is like what we do, it has to be practiced.
Yeah,
It can't, like, you could go through the classes and all those things, but you have to practice designing. Like I said, you have to load the you have to know what it feels like to load that information into your brain. People are gonna think I sound weird, but that's what it feels like. It feels like you're putting this stuff in the brain and you can work it out in your head. And if somebody calls you, interrupts you, it just disappears. So you may not need to read to become a good design professional, but if you want to become a good AEC professional, you probably need to be reading.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Is there anything else that you are seeing on the ground that's enabling a lot of the younger design professionals to find success in this space right now, currently?
You know, I think there are so many opportunities out there, Randy. It's hard not to find a good opportunity right now because of the funding from the federal government.
Yeah,
There are just so many projects. People like myself, people that work for me, they're in such high demand. They almost don't have to do anything to get a raise, right? You can have a recruiter reach out to you, and you can get a 25% raise.
yeah,
It's pretty simple. It is sometimes people just they want to take a chance on somebody because they are so strapped for talent that maybe it's spoiling people into they don't actually have to do anything to get better.
yeah,
Maybe that's not the best thing. Um, but I'm seeing that people just they don't really have by just being in the industry, you're getting a lot of opportunity
yeah,
because people are just it's so aggressive out there, particularly in the transportation space. That's where a lot of funding is going. The aggression for talent means that you don't really have to. You could be just anybody, and you may be able to find a job. The really good people, um, they always do their own thing. Either they're reading like about project management techniques. They're trying to, and I may be one of the crazy ones. Like I do some of this stuff, I do it all the time. Like I'm a complete nerd about spreadsheets, right?
yeah,
And I was telling one of the girls that work with me that I was obsessing over a spreadsheet about my budget. So maybe it's just innate. Maybe you just kind of engineer the hell out of everything. But yeah, I don't think folks have to do much to get good. Some of the things that I do see are really beneficial are joining engineering societies like ASCE,
hmm
FES, ITE. These societies have a great reach. You learn sort of the landscape of professionals in your area really well. I wish I had joined one of these organizations earlier on. Um, but if you're a young professional and you're trying to find a place to start and grow really quick, find one of those organizations and get involved with them, become an officer, go through their program if you can. That's a huge leg up
yeah.
for someone like myself who's never been through it.
Yeah, and a lot of those programs, I mean ASC specifically, because I've done trainings for them. They'll provide opportunities for you to develop and kind of build on the skill sets that you want to build on, like presenting properly, like
Yeah.
communication, public speaking. All of that plays into it because I've actually done several public speaking trainings with folks from ASCE, and it's always been one of the more popular trainings because let's face it, I mean, for anybody, I don't care whether you're a design professional or not, public speaking is one. It's, people would rather die than speak publicly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are willing to exercise that muscle of getting in front of people and sharing your thoughts or ideas or concepts or even things that you're currently working on in the design industry space,
Hmm.
and you can do it in a way that the keeps the attention of your audience, you've won.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, it makes a huge difference, and I'm sure you've seen that, Kyle, as you have grown in your career, and you now have people that are under you that you're responsible for, and I mean, Pete,
Yeah.
you've developed and understood how to put a message together that will resonate with the widest audience possible, or specifically whatever audience you're talking to at that moment, and
Yeah.
that's the importance of learning how to communicate effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a simple hurdle to, at least that's what I've seen. I've had people, not just engineers, they've told me that they're terrified of public speaking.
Mhm.
But then when I see them get up in front of our group, it's like, and they ask me after, how did I do? I'm like, you did great. What were you scared about? So it's just that initial hurdle of trying. I think maybe in the public zeitgeist, people think they're supposed to be afraid of public speaking.
Yeah,
Maybe they just need to throw that idea away because I've seen people get up and give presentations and it's like, you're what were you scared of?
yeah.
You were 100% fine. Maybe they just think they need to be scared as part of whatever is in society, but I see people do fine with it all the time.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say, you are what you say. If you say all the time that, I'm deathly afraid of it, then you are going to be. So,
You're gonna be afraid of it,
yeah,
You're gonna be afraid of
absolutely.
it.
And one of the other things I would encourage design professionals to consider, and this is not, a far-flung idea and not an original one, but certainly, Toastmasters can be really beneficial.
Mhm.
You can probably work out, most Toastmasters meet. A lot of them meet either in the evening, or a lot of them meet during the lunch hours. So, and I know
Yep.
some companies, some design firms that have built their own Toastmaster chapter within their organization just so that they could help push some of the younger people along and develop that skill set. Because once you develop it, once you are able to take an idea and you feel comfortable just off the top of your head having a conversation about it, which is what they do with like the table topics exercise that
Yeah.
Toastmasters does. Man, once you've done that, then it's game on. And then maybe if you add just sprinkle a little improvisation in there, and
Hmm.
you learn to be improvisational with your thought as well as with the ideas that you're sharing. Oh, it's all over. I mean, you'll have your
Yeah.
clients
Yeah.
eating out of your hand. I mean, am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, in South Florida, it's very, very competitive.
Hmm.
Everybody here is good at it. So you have to go that far and then polish up even a little bit more. But yeah, for another avenue for people trying to practice, maybe we've have had folks give presentations at a lunch and learn, even in the office.
Hmm.
Maybe a group of your peers are easier to present in front of. You can, maybe mumble a little things and be fine. So that's another avenue. If you don't do directly Toastmasters, put together a small presentation and give it to your group. I encourage people to do that all the time here,
Yeah.
just as another avenue to develop that skill.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes perfect sense, and that's the low hanging fruit, the easy way for you to do it, to introduce it to a wide audience. You mentioned recruitment, you mentioned retention, I mean, well, specifically recruitment and how important it is in this space. That's not going away. Do you see any solution outside of just encouraging like every other high school kid to go into architecture or engineering in college so that more matriculate
Hmm.
through higher education and then are
Yeah.
available in the marketplace? What is your hope for what's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years? Because I got to tell you, every design firm owner that I talk to is really concerned about
About
the
that.
about that.
Yeah, so you're right about the number of people. Like the past 3 years or so, I think the number of EI registrants have been pretty flat.
Hmm.
So that's not a really great sign to me. You're getting the same number of people, but more money is flooding into this industry. So that's not the best sign. If you're not, so the EI, you go EI and then PE. So if you're not developing more EIs, how are you going to have more a growing number of professional engineers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there is a way to get maybe more of the administrative tasks trained up to other disciplines. I don't think things like invoicing, progress reporting. There's things that you can get other folks into the business involved in because it is a great business to be in. Like we see a lot of success with having project controls people help on projects to sort of relieve that burden from the PM. So someone that can help you manage your schedule, help you manage your pursuits. Those sort of ancillary functions help free up the project managers to do more work. And then, yeah, I think, again, maybe it goes back to what's out in society. Maybe there needs to be um, less of a thought that this is a really difficult thing to do from, all of the things that get in the way when people think about engineering. Oh, it must be a lot of math you do every day. Oh, it must be really hard. Oh, you must be really smart. Um, all those things that get in people's head before they even decide to join, I think, need to be overcome at the high school level, at the middle school level. There needs to be, I think, maybe organizations like ASC maybe need to be doing more at those levels to encourage high school students, middle school students to get on the path towards engineering, to at least think of it in their field, because I don't think a lot of people are even thinking of it, right? The people that get into it, like I said, the numbers are the same. So what have we been doing to encourage more people to enter the field over the past however many years?
Yeah.
Why are the numbers the same? Other fields are growing. Is it because, again, going back to the macro factors, are other fields more attractive? Are people just not going to school, to colleges anymore at all? I think that's actually a thing as well. I think FAFSA saw a huge dip in their funding applications last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe less people are going to school. But there's a systemic problem that needs to be addressed at varying levels, from our level down to maybe even down to elementary school. Maybe middle school and high school is a good place to start targeting people. And I think the industry can step in and create programs to help with that. Maybe collaborate around one of these organizations and really try to fund a more consistent effort to influence even within the area, right? South Florida is huge, but the firms here, everybody knows each other. Can we fund a program that really gets into each high school or as many high schools as possible to encourage engineers to encourage students to even get into engineering to help that systemic problem?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it has to be a concerted effort. And I do see it, I would say it's more piecemeal than anything that's so cohesive that you can go to any part of the country and see it replicated. And that is the problem. I've seen bits and pieces of what's possible, but until we
Yes,
start
yeah,
reaching the young kids, even in second and third grade, to articulate the value of being an engineer in society or the value of being an architect in society and what they actually do,
yeah,
we're gonna miss out on developing the interest in this space at a young age, so that when by the time they get to high school, they're already in their minds are like, "Oh, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to go build roads like Kyle, or
yes, yeah,
I'm going to
yeah,
build buildings like fill in the blank structural engineer." So I think
yeah,
that's important. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm always encouraging companies, when and where possible, give back in your especially in your local marketplace, if no other place, and do that, because I think
yeah,
the payback will be tremendous long term. It's a long term play. It's not
yeah.
something that is going to satisfy your needs in the next 2 to 3 years, but it's also because we've been ignoring it for like a
For long
generation or
term, we've
more.
been ignoring it for the long term, right?
Exactly. So now we've got
Mm,
to kind of play catch up and figure some things out. So, but the
yeah,
possibilities are there. And as I say, engineers and architects are extremely smart individuals. They can figure it out. It's just a matter of do they have the willpower to do what's necessary to continue furthering the industry.
yeah. And yeah, I know there's a lot of hope around AI. I kind of take the human side of that bet and say that engineers are not going to be replaced. I mean, it is a bet, right? Nobody knows, but
Yeah.
I'll take the human side of the bet and say we're not going to. I will say that it is an extremely useful tool. I think for training, I use it all the time, honestly,
Yep.
just to ask questions. I think I posted once. I think it was a conversation I was having with AI. I asked it questions, it provided responses, asked it follow up, and it really helped educate me towards the subject. So from that standpoint, I could see it being a terrific use for any firm if you don't have a dedicated like training program.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe something like Chat GPT can be trained because you can train those things to
Sure.
a specific data set. Maybe train it to a data set that you want for your firm, and give it as a resource to people, an enterprise resource. If you have questions, say ask there first and figure out how to provide a question to it. I don't think it will be the panacea that people want. I think the hope for an AI revolution comes more from um, inability to solve the other problem where there's not enough people that are good enough to do the job, and people hope that will solve the problem.
Yeah.
So that's in my mind. That may be like the subconscious thing around it, but like I said, I take the human side of that bet.
Well, yeah, and I'm with you on that. Here's where I think AI will help the design industry space, because the one issue that I see is the transfer of knowledge, right? You've got a lot of engineers and architects that
Yes.
are getting older, that are exiting the industry, that are retiring, and they're taking with them 35 years, 40 years of industry knowledge, of specific
Yeah.
project knowledge. If we can leverage AI and other tools to storytell and to capture that knowledge for the next generation or the generations to come, then all of a sudden you kind of have a built-in tool, if you will, to share with the
Hmm.
younger generations of design
Yeah.
professionals as they matriculate through their career.
Yeah. And the thing is with like a senior technical advisor, they don't even know what they know until they bump up against a situation or you ask them a question.
Right.
There's so much knowledge there that I don't know how you get it out of their head other than a project experience,
Yeah.
right? Because yeah, we have someone in our group that is like that, is our senior technical advisor, our senior PM here, but he's like the greatest resource for like complex stakeholder problems, design issues. But like I said, he will not be able to articulate to you unless you have a question. You have to go, okay, I'm bumping up against this. What do I do? And he would say, oh well, we did this there, or you're going to have to do this. So yeah, if you could get the information out of his head into a Chat GPT bot and you could ask that thing the question, that would be
It
amazing.
would be amazing. It would be really amazing. Matter of fact,
Yeah.
because I know everybody has a Yoda walking around in their
Yes.
office
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
knows everything. So, well, man, this has been enlightening, Kyle. I really appreciate you taking time
Mhm.
out of your busy schedule to, just share with us some of your thoughts. And again, I want to encourage anybody listening to this to please follow Kyle on LinkedIn, and I'll put his LinkedIn profile online so that you can kind of see some of his interactions and commentary. I would also encourage you to follow Mark Zweig on LinkedIn as well, because Mark typically will tease out or share his weekly article in the Zweig letter, which he's been writing since 1992, I believe. So that's a long time to have a byline and to
Yeah.
be writing it. And so, and then to have young upstarts like this young man in front of me who is super smart, commenting on that, and in such a thoughtful way that really makes you go, So I would certainly encourage you to check that out, and just look at the discourse and dialogue that comes out around those articles, and certainly around some of the commentary that Kyle brings to the table, which I think is just it's excellent. So Kyle, thank you so much. You want to share those books that you mentioned earlier for the
Yeah.
for the
Sure. So
audience?
yeah, but I just want to say thank you for inviting me. Of course, this was
Absolutely.
really great. Thank you for reaching out. The first book is The Lessons of History by
Okay.
Will and Ariel Durant.
Okay.
And what that book is going to do is going to help you figure out where you are, not only in history, but where we are in as a society. Because that book is beautifully written. You can read it multiple times. It's a very small book. It's the easiest history book you'll ever read. The second book is Zero to One by Peter Thiel. And at the end of Lessons of History, they give a discourse on is progress real? And in the book Zero to One, he answers that question. Progress is real, and it comes in the form of technological advancement. Technological advancement is not the internet was technological advancement, right? Roads are not specifically technological advancement. We are spreading a current idea. So that's Zero to One, Peter Thiel. The third book is The Great Bridge by I forget the guy's name, David McCullough or
Okay.
Peter McCullough, one of those guys. The Great Bridge. It's the story of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's a thick one. It's going to take you a long time to read, and I
Okay.
would suggest reading these books slowly. Don't try to blow through them. They require some reflection. So the Great Bridge is basically as much historical fact as this guy could pull. He put it into that book and the story of the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. The next one is Atlas Shrugged,
Yes.
and the reason I want you to read the Great Bridge is because it's a 0 to 1 move in real life, right? What happens when people actually innovate and do something. And Atlas Shrugged is a fictional telling of what happens when people stop innovating. So at least that's how I ever interpreted the book in my reading of it.
Hmm.
And then the last book, and Atlas Shrugged is controversial. I would
Yeah.
say read it and make up your own mind. Don't
Sure.
listen to what everybody else tells you. If you think it's trash, I'm sorry, but I don't think it was. And then the last book is a book by Scott Adams. It's called How to Fail at Everything and Still Win Big.
Yeah.
And he talks about creating systems for your life versus goals. It's a really interesting book. Lots of great talents that you can develop there. Lots of good ideas on how to think about your health, how to think about your sleep. So those would be the 5 books that I would give a young engineer. Read those. It may take you a year and a half, and I think that will set you on a great reading trajectory. So I gave you an easy one. The first 2 are easy.
Yeah.
So the first 2 are intentionally easy to get you into the other ones.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. The Lessons of History, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, The Great Bridge by McCullough, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and How to Fail at Everything and Still Win Big by Scott Adams. Definitely picked some good books there, and certainly want to encourage folks to check out those books that Kyle has recommended. You could do a lot worse. And certainly, as I always say, you can't have too many books on your nightstand, and that's for sure. So I want to encourage you to continue to take up the mantle of growing yourself and getting better and creating the best version of yourself. And remember, just like what Kyle's has remarked over this last 40 or 50 minutes that we've talked, it's never too late to shoot your shot. And trust me, somebody's always listening. So please, if I can't say this enough, get out there and let the world hear what you have to say. And Kyle, I certainly appreciate you doing that and putting that into practice on a daily basis. So I wish you nothing but continued success. And I'm going to have to figure out another way to bring you here on the Zweig Letter podcast for another future episode. But I
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This was fun, sir. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. We really appreciate you checking us out here. Remember, you can find the Zweig Letter at zweiggroup.com. That's the website for Zweig Group, and you can find out about all of the different services that Zweig Group offers. You can subscribe to the Zweig Letter for free. You can subscribe your whole firm for free, and get the Zweig Letter dropped into your inbox in PDF form every Monday morning. And just like Kyle does, you can dissect it. You can respond back to Mark, and I guarantee you, he will respond to you.
He
So,
does. He
so
does.
that is a good thing. But anyway, I appreciate you guys listening to this episode, and we'll be back soon with another new episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we will talk with you later. Peace.